The old man shook his head and said, "Young master, it is better if we give up for now. This girl is not simple. We need to make preparations to deal with her. Otherwise, we might end up being the ones that would end up suffering." "Humph. What is there to plan about? Aren't you a superhuman? How can you not deal with such a girl? Don't tell me that simply because she has a special ability, she is stronger than you," Derek shouted as he looked at the old man with dissatisfaction. He was so angry now. After all, he had just found the target that he could marry. In the end, the old man allowed her to leave. Although he was not planning on using force on her, he was planning to make sure that she agreed to a date with him. But now, all of that was gone. He had to begin following her again, before finally getting a chance to talk to her. But still, there was a chance that he could get to her if he chased after her now. It was just that the old man was still holding him back. "Young master, I said that girl is not simple. She has already reached the superhuman level and she possesses an incredible ability. It is not simple for a person of her age to reach the superhuman level. That implies that there has to be a strong backing that she has," the old man explained helplessly. Derek blinked his eyes in confusion. Superhuman level? Why did he not notice that? And, how is it possible that a person that was almost of the same age as him had already reached the superhuman level? Looking at Derek's blank expression, the old man sighed. It seemed that this young master was excited that he was not even thinking even after he was beaten up by the other party. At the same time, the old man could tell that Celine was holding back during the first attack. After all, according to the strength that she demonstrated when he blocked the attack, it was obviously stronger than before. Previously, he had never expected that Celine had a special ability at all. That was the reason that, by the time that he reacted, Derek had already been blasted into a wall. Moreover, the old man knew that Celine was still holding back. Although he could guarantee that he could beat her, but it was going to be a difficult task for him to do that. So, there was no need for him to risk injuries for something as simple as getting Derek to do as he wished. After a moment of silence, Derek seemed to have understood what was going on. He finally began understanding why the old man had held back despite being a superhuman. Additionally, it was only now that Derek realized that this was the first time that the old man had prevented him from getting what he wanted. "Anyway, I want to know where she lives. After that, we'll have to deal with that whatever Jack that she mentioned before. I don't want just anybody near her. If he insists, I might as well kill him," Derek stated with a cold expression on his face. The old man on the other hand couldn't help but wonder just how stupid this young master of his was. After all, for a girl of such ability, it was obvious that Celine would not just take anyone as her boyfriend. So, that implied that the other guy must be someone with some ability at background. In the end, knowing that there was nothing that he could do about it, he decided to remain silent. If there was trouble that he could not handle, he would just use the background that Derek possessed. On the other side, Jack had not been staying idle. Instead, he was doing what he had thought would take him about a week before he managed to stabilize things. Just as he had planned, he had decided to set up the Jackson Enterprise. This was something that he had been planning for a long time, just during the first moments that he had gotten the system. And now that he had dominated 5 industries, he thought that this was the best time to set up the Jackson Enterprise. So, during the past 2 days, he had already made enough arrangements for that. He had decided to use Alpha Tower, the one that had been staying idle ever since he had acquired it, Chapter 155, as the headquarters of the Enterprise. Due to the influence that he possessed, it was not difficult for him to be able to do things that would have taken a long time in just a few days. And in the past 2 days, he had already managed to complete all the requirements. All that was left was the renovation of the tower to match his tastes. Although it was true that he was about to go to the stronghold and the money from the normal world was no longer of much importance to him, but still, since this was where he had started, he was not willing to give up on everything just like that. And at this moment, Jack was planning the opening of the Jackson Enterprise together with Jonathan. And, the meeting was being held in the villa that was in Serenity residential area. "What do you mean by making me the manager? Do you think that I want to be a manager for one of your companies? Dream on. I better go and take over the family businesses," Jonathan snorted angrily. He couldn't believe that Jack had called him over just to tell him that he wanted him to work as the manager of his company. How ridiculous was that? He was the heir to the Jezda family. How was he supposed to work as a mere manager? Wasn't Jack looking down on him too much? Although the two of them always quarreled from time to time, that didn't mean that they had a deep grudge against each other. So, he was wondering why it was that Jack was asking him to be a mere manager. Jack looked at the furious Jonathan with a calm expression on his face. Then, he sighed and said, "That's okay, two of you don't want to be the manager of Jackson Enterprise. I'll simply look for someone else to do that." What? Jonathan was surprised when he heard that. He didn't believe what he had just heard. After all, Jackson Enterprise that Jack had started was something that covered 5 industries completely. At the same time, the Jackson Enterprise was going to be involved in other industries as well. There were the health sector, food sector, completely different from grocery department. And even the cosmetics company that was owned by Caitlin had decided to join the enterprise as a subsidiary company. Of course, Caitlin was not selling the company. It was just that, she thought that, since Celine was going to be Jack's wife in the future, if the Angel's prominence joined the enterprise, what difference would it make? After all, Celine was the only child that she had, and since she was to be married to Jack, he would still own it. Of course, it's as I just said. You're going to be the CEO of the Jackson Enterprise. Although I said manager before, there's actually not that much of a difference between a manager and a CEO. But, that's only if you agree. Anyway, you have already decided that you are not going to. Jack acknowledged what he had just said. He was about to say that Jonathan had refused anyway when suddenly, Jonathan shot to his feet as he exclaimed, "What nonsense! Whatever I just said a moment ago was nothing but pure nonsense. You shouldn't care about that nonsense, right?" Although Jack was expecting such a response, well, along the line, but he had never expected that this guy was going to be this shameless. Anyway, that was just how Jonathan was. "Are you sure that you will not do nonsense after I hand over the enterprise to you?" Jack asked with squinted eyes as if he was reconsidering his decision. At this moment, Jack had suddenly changed the situation from being the one who was offering Jonathan the position, to Jonathan being the one that was seeking the position. But of course, Jonathan was smart enough to realize this. Otherwise, how was he supposed to be given the chance of being the head of the Jezda family? "What nonsense would I be doing? Anyway, I do believe that I'm the guy that you'd trust the most, and that is why you want me to take over on this role. So, don't you worry, I will not disappoint you in this," Jonathan stated seriously as he got back to his seat. "Whatever. I'll be leaving with Celine and Denali. There's something that we need to take care of. So, we might be coming back anytime soon. So, try to make sure that you don't mess things up for me. Otherwise, when I come back, I will make sure that you pay for making losses for my enterprise," Jack responded. Jonathan was a little excited about the opportunity that he didn't even care about the pain if he messed up part. Anyway, the wealth and influence of Jackson Enterprise was way higher than the Jezda family in the normal countries. A while later, Jack and Jonathan talked about the launching of Jackson Enterprise in 3 days. After the launching, Jack would be ready to leave for the stronghold. The arrangements for the launching of Jackson Enterprise went well. In the past 3 days, after Jack left the position of the CEO to Jonathan, the guy worked so hard to ensure that everything went as he wanted them to. Jack of course did not appear on the screen during the launching of Jackson Enterprise. He was someone who always kept a low profile. So, during the launching of the company, only Jonathan was the one that had made an appearance. Since Jonathan was taking on the role of the CEO of the Jackson Enterprise, of course, he had to be present. Anyway, he was going to be interacting with a lot of people in the near future. Jonathan was not like Jack, who liked keeping a low profile. Instead, since he was the heir of just the family, no matter how much he wanted to keep a low profile, Jonathan had to be seen by a lot of people in the near future. When the Jackson Enterprise was released to the public, there was a commotion that was created. After all, it was during this moment that they realized that, all the 5 industries that had been dominated by a single company, it turned out that each of those 5 companies actually belonged to this Jackson Enterprise. Of course, that was not something that shocked people the most. Instead, the thing that shocked them was the fact that the Jackson Enterprise actually belonged to a single person. Had it been that Jackson Enterprise was actually owned by a group of people, then, they might be able to understand. But, just a single person was able to dominate 5 industries, and that was not all. After all, the subsidiary companies that were present in Jackson Enterprise were all big companies in the country. Some of them even had some influence in foreign nations, so, none of them was considered small. They could not help but wonder just what kind of background this person possessed to be able to dominate 5 industries. Of course, there was always a group of people that wanted to know who was behind Jackson Enterprise. But no matter how much they investigated, they did not find anything important. Instead, all the information they found was the fact that, the one that was acting as a CEO of the company was actually the heir of a reclusive family. Additionally, the group of people that had come out to claim that they were actually in the group that was in charge of the 5 industries were a little embarrassed. After all, the information that came out was that Jackson Enterprise was actually owned by a single person. So, how was it that they owned shares, when it was actually owned by a single person? Still, this group of people was shameless enough to go ahead and claim that they had sold their shares to the current owner of Jackson Enterprise. So, although a lot of people had doubts in their minds, nobody had the guts to go and question them. Anyway, it could be said that the launching of Jackson Enterprise was a success. With the linking of all the companies that were owned by Jack, it became easier to manage them. Additionally, Denali did not have to do anything this time. Instead, since during the early stages, she had already made a stable foundation, it became easy for Jonathan to take over. As Denali herself, she and Celine had decided to spend their time together with Wendy, Angie and Samantha. This group had been going out, enjoying themselves to the maximum. But until this moment, it could be said that Jack had finally completed all that he needed to do. All that was left was for him to depart for the stronghold. That way, he would be able to begin completing his end of the contract that he had signed with the Shadow Organization. During the past 5 days, 3 days after the launching of Jackson Enterprise, Derek, who had been fully engrossed in his investigation, finally completed the investigation and let out a sigh of relief. He had never expected that it was going to be difficult to know who this person called Jack was. After all, although he had managed to find a good hacker, but he came to realize that the skills of the hacker were not able to overcome the firewalls that had been placed to defend the information about Jack or anyone that was close to him. For that reason, the hacker had to do a lot. But still, no matter how much he tried, he never succeeded. He ended up contacting other hackers, but just like him, they all ended up with a failure. This had frustrated Derek. The time that he had been given by his father to be out was almost elapsing. And if he did not find the information that he was looking for, he would have to resort to another method in making sure that he took Celine with him. But the problem was just that, the old man had informed him that, since Celine had already reached the superhuman level, then, there was no way that the background that was protecting her was going to leave her just like that. She was important, and there was no way that they were going to allow her to be in any danger. That implied that, there might actually be a person that was protecting her from the shadows. So, if they made any move, they might actually force the other party out of the shadows, and the issue might escalate. But still, Derek had no choice. After all, currently, they possessed not even a single piece of information about Celine's background. That implied that, if she decided to leave, there was no way that they were going to get her easily. For that reason, Derek had decided that if he did not find any piece of information about Celine, then, he was going to kidnap her, even if it meant forcing out the protector from the shadows. But it was just 2 days ago that he came up with a plan. On that specific day, 2 days ago, he was out for a stroll due to the frustrations that he was having, when he coincidentally saw Celine out with the ladies that she was with the previous time that they met. It was only then that he came to a realization. Since there was no any information about Celine, then, it was going to be better if they followed her. This way, they will be able to know who it was that she interacted with. And, it was only today that Derek was informed about Jack. They had already been following Celine. And finally they were able to see Jack, who was out with Celine on that day. All the other pieces of information that he had received were completely useless. But, it was different now. He had been trying to look for information about Jack, but he had always failed. So, now that he had found him, it was going to be easy to deal with him. Even though he suspected that there might actually be something particular about Jack that had attracted Celine to him, he did not think much of it. After all, how many people were able to reach the superhuman level at such an age? Finally, I will be able to deal with you, making sure that you don't taint what I have targeted. Derek muttered in a lower voice. At the same time, a cold killing intent flashed through his eyes. Since he had already been informed about the current location that Jack was in, he wasted no time and got into the car, driving towards the location. This time, he did not even bring the old man who had gone out to look for information as well. In about 45 minutes, he managed to find Jack. At this time, he was together with Celine. The two of them were inside a car that was carrying some luggage. It was obvious that they were going somewhere. And when Derek saw this, he felt completely uncomfortable. He had already taken Celine as his, so, when he saw her with another man, laughing with him, he was of course irritated. With fury in his heart, he kicked open the car's door and stepped out. He was just about to charge towards the car where Jack and Celine were, when suddenly, someone grabbed his shoulder. He turned around angrily, about to scold the person that was holding him. But, he was stunned when he realized that the person that had grabbed his shoulder was actually the old man that usually protected him. "Weren't you supposed to be out to look for information?" Derek asked irritatedly. "Young master, I have already looked for the information. I have realized that this person that was together with Celine was actually her friend. The backgrounds that they possess is nothing much. They're just normal people," the old man responded. "Okay then. So don't disturb me this time. I have decided that I'm going to take care of that brat," Derek stated as he looked at Jack with fury in his eyes. "We have to be careful. You have only found out that he is the person that is called Jack. But you don't possess any information about him. We have to go back and investigate first. Only then will we be able to make our moves," the old man stated. He was a person who thought everything logically. "I already said I don't care. Anyway, I have to deal with him now," Derek said as he swatted away the hand that was grabbing his shoulder. After that, he looked at Jack, only to see that Jack was actually looking at him as well. Today was the day that Jack and Celine had decided that they were going to the stronghold. Since he had already managed to finish all the arrangements that he had, Jack did not see any other reason to continue staying here. Other than fulfilling his part of the contract, where he was supposed to provide the shadow organization with resources, there was something else that he had to do. And that was, to investigate about his mother's whereabouts. Unless he found information about his mother, there was no way that Jack was planning to stop. He had to ensure that he received the information about his mother's whereabouts. Whether she was alive or not, he had to find the information. After all, even if she was dead, they had to get the body. How cold Jack just settled with the fact that he had buried a clone rather than his mother's real body. Before they left, Celine decided to come over and bid her mother and father goodbye. Jack came over with her because they were his parent-in-laws. So, there was no harm in telling them goodbye. Of course, they had simply told Caitlin that they were going out for a vacation. There was no way that he was going to tell her that they were actually going in a place that was filled with danger. He was sure that if he informed her of something like that, then, she was going to cause a lot of trouble, trying to make sure that they didn't go anywhere. Nevertheless, Jack was not worried about the safety of the two of them. After all, currently, he was having 3 more chances that he could utilize to reach the 5th stage of the superhuman level. And other than that, the two of them were affected by the 100 times income multiplier system. That implied that, after they went to the stronghold, getting resources was not going to be a problem at all. But of course, there was something that had to be made note of. That was the fact that, despite Celine being affected by the system, the 100 times income multiplier system was only applying to her through activities such as learning or training. As for the other sources of income, they were not multiplied by 100 times. For instance, if she did business, and earned $100, that amount was not going to be multiplied by the system. As for the reason why that was so, Jack himself did not know because the system never explained the reason. The two of them had already gotten out of the angel's prominence, ready to depart, and he had decided that he was going to leave with the car that he had been rewarded with by the system. Although it was true that this car was not much as compared to those that were found in the stronghold, according to the information that he had received from Samantha, but still, Jack wanted to continue studying it. Additionally, ever since the time that the system had begun affecting his learning speed, he had managed to know so many things about how that car was manufactured. He believed that it was going to take him only 2 weeks, for him to be able to completely analyze everything about that car. For him to take 2 more weeks despite being able to learn things at a speed of 100 times faster than before, that just showed how complex the production of the car was. After they had said their final goodbyes to Caitlin and Bruce, the two parents went back into the building, wanting to continue some discussion. As for Jack and Celine, the two of them got into the car, ready to leave. "We are going there, but we are not sure about the time that we are going to come back. Until now, we don't know much about the strongholds. Samantha is prohibited from telling us anything important about the reason for the setting up of the strongholds, by the contract that she signed. But still, she told us that it is going to be dangerous there," Jack said as he looked at Celine. "I know of that already. Anyway, since there is danger in this world, and the people from the stronghold have already begun getting involved in matters concerning me, then, there's no way that I'm going to hide from this," Celine responded. She was not worried at all. After all, other than the fact that she herself had already reached the superhuman level, there was also Jack who was way stronger than her. Moreover, she believed that with the methods that Jack possessed, it was not going to be difficult for him to be able to protect her. That was the trust that she had in the person that she loved. Okay then. Let us go and meet up with Samantha and Denali. We better get there as soon as possible. I want to do my investigation the moment that we arrive there, Jack stated. Then, he was just about to start the car when he suddenly felt that there was a killing intent that was directed towards him. He frowned a little and turned his gaze outside the car window, and there, he saw that there was a youth that was glaring at him as if he was going to murder him in the next moment. Jack looked at the young man with squinted eyes. Just from his appearance, Jack could immediately tell that this was the guy that had been going after Celine. He was the guy that was claiming that he was planning to snatch Celine away from him. Since this person had not been making any moves for 5 days now, Jack had decided not to pursue the matter. But it seemed that he was wrong. This guy had come over to look for trouble, just judging from the expression that was on his face. Additionally, Jack looked at the old man that was holding back the young man. At the same time as he looked at the old man, a system prompt appeared in front of him. That old man is almost at the 4th level of the superhuman stage. There is a chasm that separates those that are at the 2nd stage and those that are in the 4th stage. So, if you face that old man right now, although he is not capable of killing you, but you have no chance of beating him at all. Jack's eyes narrowed a little. After that, he decided to ignore the idiot and leave. After all, there was no need for him to cause any ruckus considering that even if he wanted, there was no way that he was going to fight the old man here. Read latest chapters on novel, B, in, com. Moreover, from the system, he already knew that he did not have the chance of beating that old man. And, since that old man was there was no need for him to go there and waste his time and energy in doing something that was not going to be productive at all. As for using the 3 chances that he possessed, that was not something that he was planning to use anytime soon. After all, he wanted to save those chances until the time that he had no other choice but to use them. In fact, after going to the stronghold, he was planning to utilize the resources that were found in the stronghold. As for the chances, he was going to spare them, making sure that by the time that he was going to use them, they were going to have much of an effect, as compared to now. What is it? Celine asked when she realized that Jack was looking outside. She followed his gaze and realized that Derek was actually out there. She was of course displeased by the fact that this guy had come over to look for her. She was just about to step out of the car and go and teach that stupid guy a lesson when suddenly, Jack stopped her. He shook his head while looking around. Celine immediately understood the message. After all, currently, they were still in the center of the city. If the two of them began fighting, of course, she and the old man, it was going to cause a huge commotion. Moreover, it was going to tell the world that there was actually a group of people that possessed superhuman capabilities. And, that was something that was being prevented by the strongholds. As for the reason, that was something that even Samantha herself did not know. That was the rule that had been set, and there was nobody that was allowed to question it, unless they had enough strength. Let's just go. There's no need for us to continue staying here. Anyway, it is not like they are going to attack us, unless they are idiots, Jack stated. The next moment, he began driving towards the outskirts of the city. Both Samantha and Denali were waiting for them. Since only Samantha knew how they were going to reach the stronghold, then, they had to go together with her as she was going to be their tour guide. Derek did not avoid Jack's eyes as he looked over. Instead, he looked towards him with even more murderous intention. He could tell that from the way that Jack was looking at him, it was obvious that he had recognized him. So, Derek was expecting that Jack was going to come over to deal with him. After all, he had just claimed that he was having the intentions to snatch away his girlfriend from him. But, he was dumbfounded in the next moment when he noticed that, after Celine looked over, the two of them actually drove away, completely ignoring him. What the heck? Are you ignoring me? I will definitely make sure that I kill you, Derek shouted in the direction that Jack and Celine had left in. What the heck? Are you ignoring me? I will definitely make sure that I kill you, Derek shouted in the direction that Jack and Celine had left in. Young master, you have to calm down a little. From the way that I can see, it seems that they are departing from the city. After all, they are carrying some luggage, despite not big. And, from the direction that they are heading to, I am suspecting that they are heading towards the stronghold. Perhaps we might follow them and know about the background that they possess, the old man stated. Unlike Derek, who had just been observing Jack and Celine, the old man had used his good vision to easily see that, in the car, there were actually a few bags. Of course, those were the only ones that he could see. He was not sure if the car had more luggage inside. All that he could see was through the window that had not been closed. Otherwise, the tinted windows of the car would not have allowed him to see anything inside. When Derek heard what the old man had said, he thought that this was actually good. If he managed to find whatever background that the two of them possessed, then it was going to be easier for him. Although he could not find any information about the two of them, but still, that was not going to be the same if he was going to follow them back to the stronghold. So, he managed to push down the jealousy and envy that he was having in his heart, and went back into the car, followed by the old man. Immediately after that, Derek drove towards the same direction that Jack and Celine had left in. In fact, he was driving way faster, just to make sure that he did not lose them. Of course, had he not been knowing the general direction that Jack and Celine were heading in, he was definitely not going to be capable of catching up to them. But still, they had already guessed that this group was going to the stronghold. There were only a few entrances to the stronghold. And there was one in the direction that Jack and Celine had headed in, and this time, Derek had decided that, after he found out the background of the two, if Jack's background was considerably lower than his, he was going to make sure to eliminate him. How dare he continue staying with the woman that he had set his eyes on? That was something that he was not willing to allow to continue happening any longer. So, any chance, he was going to take it. After Jack and Celine arrived at the outskirts of the city, they found that Samantha and Denali were waiting for them. The two of them were inside the car that had been gifted to Denali as a birthday present. New updates at novel, bin.com. When Denali saw that Jack and Celine had arrived, she immediately began driving. She was being given directions by Samantha, so they drove. Of course, it would have been better if they had used a plane instead of cars. But Samantha had said that they were not going that far in order to get to the strongholds. Instead, they were going with the simplest route possible. Additionally, there was no plane that led there at all, so only cars could be used to get there, otherwise they had to ride or walk there. So, the group drove for 5 hours before they finally stopped. They decided to take a break first. There was no way that Jack was going to be on the road for more than 5 hours continuously without stopping. With the speed that the cars possessed, they had already left Kartu City long ago. Moreover, they had already left the central province. It was a good thing that the central province was not that big. Otherwise, they would have surely taken a long time. After a 1-hour break, the group finally resumed their journey. And as they continued to move, Jack realized that the number of cars that was heading in this direction had been drastically reducing. Moreover, they had changed from the luxury cars to jeeps. And, in each and every jeep that they met with, there was a group of bulky men with 1 or 2 women, who were currently armed with guns and so on. This was of course something that Jack could easily tell considering that he had already dealt with mercenaries before. After all, they had come over to GVSL to look for a job due to the invitation that they had received. This group of mercenaries always goes to the city that is outside the stronghold. There, they will be able to look for chances of entering the stronghold. What they don't know is the fact that all those that are currently inside are actually trying to look for a method that they can go out, Samantha stated. Currently, there was an ongoing call that was making communication between the two vehicles possible. So, although Samantha was inside Denali's car, she could still communicate with Jack and Celine. As for the matter of airtime, what was that to the richest man in the entire country? Perhaps even in the neighboring countries, there was nobody as rich as Jack. We people in small strongholds are nothing more than cannon fodder. Unless we become superhumans, we are considered useless. It is just that, recently, ever since I had joined the stronghold, I have never engaged in the real battle, Samantha continued. And they did not give us any information about who it was that we were fighting against. It was just that, we were told that there was an invasion that was happening in the Blue Planet. And, had it not been for the strongholds, then, the Blue Planet would have already been invaded by now. As for the consequences of the invasion, that is something that we have not been in front of as of yet. Jack listened to all of this silently. He could feel that there was bitterness in Samantha's words. After all, what she had just said was that, currently, with the power level that she was possessing, she was no different from a cannon fodder. Anyway, Jack was not worried about anyone that was close to him being used as a cannon fodder. He was someone that liked to have control. So, if he wanted control, it was not just enough for himself to be strong. After all, there was no way that he was going to deal with everything by himself. By having a group of strong subordinates, he might be able to dominate the strongholds more easily. Moreover, that is going to make it easy for him to easily get the information about his mother. Finally, after another 2 hours of driving, when darkness was about to cover the land, they arrived in an inconspicuous mountain. When they arrived here, they noticed that the number of mercenaries that was here was actually higher than those that they had encountered. This group of mercenaries had actually made a camp here. As for the reason why that was so, Samantha went ahead and explained. It turned out that not just anybody was going to be allowed to enter the domain of the strongholds. So, they had to prove their capabilities first. And after that, they had to wait for their chance to enter. As for the reason why they could not enter the domain of the strongholds using another means, it was simply because there was an invisible barrier that was blocking them from going through. Well, it was not like they were going to be able to touch it physically. It was just that, in order to enter the domain of the strongholds, there was a special entrance that had been created as a passageway. And currently, the blue star was just like how it was supposed to be. But, the strongholds were completely hidden, in such a way that, no matter how much a person searched, they were not going to be able to find them. And that was the need for the entrances. Other than using the entrances, there was no any other method of reaching them. And, it was the same. There was no way that a person that was inside the stronghold domain was going to be capable of coming back to the normal world without using the entrances. After they arrived, their cars immediately attracted the attention of the people in the surrounding area. Although this was still in Azima, this part of the country was completely inhabited by any normal citizen. In fact, this was considered the land of mercenaries. There was nobody that was considered normal when it came to the matter of killing and skills that could be found in this area. And this was actually the spot that was used by several mercenaries from different countries. And although it was found in the northern province of Azima, the government of Azima was not in full control of this area. And now, here, there were several types of cars. The majority of them of course came from other countries. Those that came from Azima, the ones that had been introduced by Jack into the market were only a few. After all, Jack had not yet begun exporting the vehicles into other countries. Only a few people from the other countries had managed to find the cars through the connections that they possessed. And when Jack and the rest came out of the cars, they immediately attracted the attention even more. More so, the attention that they attracted this time was obviously those that were filled with evil intent. In the eyes of the mercenaries, Jack's group only consisted of a rich young man and 3 beautiful young ladies. They were actually an easy target for the mercenaries. A group of 3 was the first to make their move. They approached Jack's group with smiles on their faces. The one that was leading them was a man who was currently wearing a sleeveless shirt, the sleeves obviously torn up, with a tattoo of a scorpion on his bulging biceps. "Hey kid, it's dangerous here. Why don't you come and be under my protection?" Although the man was talking to Jack, his gaze was actually focused on Celine. Well, he was not to be blamed as considering right now, Celine was the one with the most attractive appearance amongst all the 3. Of course, although he was offering Jack and his group protection, he was not sincere in what he was saying at all. Instead, just from the look that was in his eyes, it was clear that his intentions were not pure, not at all in the line of what he had just said. "No thanks," Jack replied simply. After that, he looked at Samantha. Samantha immediately understood what Jack was implying. So, she began leading the way towards the entrance to the stronghold's domain. Denali, Celine, and Jack both followed her. They were not willing to argue with a group of mercenaries. Anyway, it was not as if there was a good person here. But, as long as they did not do anything overboard, then, Jack and his group were going to ignore them. As for what was considered overboard, that was something that Jack would judge by himself. When the group of 3 saw that Jack was actually ignoring them, they could not help but be a little dumbfounded. They began wondering where this kid in the group that he had come over with, had gotten the guts to come over without anyone that was protecting them. Even if they were actually from a big background, what did that matter? It was not as if the backgrounds that they possessed were going to do anything to them. After all, this was the mercenaries' land, and even the government did not have much say when it came to this place. "Humph. I was trying to show you my goodwill, but it seems that you don't want it. Anyway, you have already disrespected me. So why don't you compensate me for your behavior so that I can let you go?" The bulky guy with a scorpion tattoo stated with a cold expression on his face. Jack ignoring him was no different from slapping his face. Although it was true that he was not having even the slightest intent of protecting Jack, but this was the mercenaries' land. That implied that, here, it was everyone depending on their own strength. Since he was currently the strongest when compared to Jack, then, he was supposed to be the one that was saying while Jack following. So, how could he take it easily when Jack had just ignored him? Jack did not respond. What was there to argue about with an idiot? Anyway, they had to get to the domain as soon as possible. Nighttime was already approaching, and they had to get somewhere to stay. He was not willing to camp outside like this group of mercenaries. Being completely ignored once again, the patience of the guy with the tattoo finally elapsed. He shouted furiously, "FCK, I am talking to you and you are ignoring me? It seems that you don't value your life anymore. If you think that you are still in that family of yours where you can do as you please, then, I will have to teach you that you are in a completely different place now." Immediately after saying that, he waved his hand, and one of the two men that was with him took a step forward. He was obviously intending to capture Jack and beat him up. "Arnold, are you not being so presumptuous? Just say that you are eyeing the beauty there. Stop claiming that they are ignoring you. It is not as if they are the ones that called you, but you are the one that went over after them." At this time, the voice of a female echoed. Arnold, the guy with a scorpion tattoo, turned his gaze and looked at the lady. She did not look that much old, probably in her late 20s. But still, her body was slightly muscular, unlike ordinary ladies. She had short blonde hair and an exquisite figure. She was a beauty, easily attracting the attention of everyone that looked at her. Although she was not comparable to Celine, but at least, her beauty was not to be underestimated. Currently, she was wearing a military cargo pants with a tank top that revealed her slender but muscular hands, as well as the belly muscles that had formed abs, thought not much prominent. She was playing with a dagger, one like that of the military. When Arnold saw her, his expression shifted. After that, with a disgruntled expression, he simply grunted then turned around. This lady was not to be messed with. Although she was a beauty, there was not even a single man amongst the mercenaries that wanted to mess with her. After all, apart from the fact that she herself was strong, way stronger than Arnold could handle, even her brother was actually very strong. In fact, he was the leader of the strongest mercenary group among all the groups that were known. So, although he was dissatisfied, there was nothing that he could do. Even the guy that was intending to beat up Jack decided to retreat when she spoke. Anyway, if he pissed her off, he was definitely going to beat him up. Of course, when the lady spoke, Jack and the group noticed her. But they did not say anything. Anyway, they appreciated what she did. But still, they could have handled the problem if it came their way. So, the lady watched as Jack's group left the area. She could not help but grumble in dissatisfaction. Not even a thank you. Anyway, it does not matter. It does not cost me anything to speak up for them. But, it will not be the same the next time. Unless you ask me, I will not do anything because you look ungrateful. After saying that, she decided to leave. She wanted to meet up with her brother because she had decided that she wanted to go and join the city that was outside the big stronghold. She had been informed that that was the place where the majority of the mercenaries went to. According to the information that she had received, as long as a person was able to enter behind those walls, they would be able to have a better life. More than that, they would get stronger than before. After Jack and his group left, they soon arrived in front of a place that was surrounded by a tall wall. From Jack's estimation, he could tell that the wall was currently about 10 meters tall. Additionally, just looking at it, he could tell that it was made from a material that he had never seen or heard of before. Those are the ones that are found in the battlefield. The production of this type of stone actually began after the invasion. Although it might seem precious because it is capable of blocking even high-caliber bullets from penetrating them, but they are considered nothing back in the strongholds. Samantha explained when she saw Jack's curious gaze. Jack simply nodded. He had realized that it seemed that the strongholds were a completely different place, and there were several types of materials that would not be found here. It was just like the materials that were required for the armor that he had been given the blueprint by the system to be manufactured. Those materials could only be found in the stronghold domain. Samantha led the way to the gate that led into the area that was surrounded by the wall, and, in front of the gate, there was a group of people that was wearing shiny orange high-tech armors. It was obvious that they were the ones that were in charge of ensuring security here. Jack could see that each and every one of them possessed high-tech equipment. That included laser weapons, just like the ones that Samantha and the rest of the people that were from the stronghold possessed. Halt! Entry is not allowed now. You can only come in for testing tomorrow at 7 a.m. The testing time and entry into the new domain begins at 7 in the morning and ends at 5 o'clock in the evening. One of the men that was standing in front of the gate stated with an indifferent expression on his face. I am from a stronghold. Samantha stated. In the next moment, she revealed the armor that she was hiding inside the thick clothing that she was putting on. When the 5 people that were standing at the entrance heard that, they were surprised. After all, not just anyone knew about the strongholds. In fact, not many people called them strongholds. Only those that were inside could call them that way, except a very few number of people like Benjamin. That was the exact reason why they were calling that area a new domain, rather than the stronghold domain. It was obvious that if they said stronghold domain, then, there was going to be a group of people that was going to easily relate the strongholds to something. After all, the strongholds were mainly meant for protection or defense, and at times for attacking. So, many people related to the reason why the people from the stronghold were not allowed to reveal the fact that they possessed superhuman capabilities to the normal people. "Please come in. Forgive me for my disrespect." The person that had spoken previously stated once again, only this time, he spoke in a respectful voice. Stronghold Domain, Panther's organization. Anthony was having a rigid expression on his face. He was facing the 3 people in front of him. They were none other than Doris, Ken, and Steve. He was not satisfied with the results. Other than the fact that John had also died, he had not even managed to get what he had wanted. That implied that he had suffered a loss without any gain. Now, he was wondering what he was supposed to tell the Supreme Leader. After all, he had been given a single chance to make sure that he found what they were looking for. And if they did not, he was going to be punished for that. Losing 2 guardians at the same time was a huge blow to not only his faction, but to the entire organization. Now, they were on the same level as the Butterfly organization when it came to the matters concerning the strength that they possessed. This was definitely something that the other people from the other factions were going to use against him. Now, Anthony was thinking about going out by himself to look for what he wanted. It seemed that even if he sent another group of people, they were going to be beaten up, and perhaps, there was going to be 1 or 2 of them that was going to be killed. "Vice Supreme Leader, it was not our fault at all. We were actually against a group that possessed a superhuman powerhouse. And, after we used the Mirage Crystal, it did not have any effect on them. It was as if the Mirage Crystal was just a light show to them," Doris stated. She had to ensure that she explained to Anthony the situation that they had encountered. After all, she knew that he was blaming them, although he had not said anything. Anyway, there was nothing that they could do against a superhuman. Just like how Anthony was helpless in front of a superhuman powerhouse. "Do you have any information about the background that they possess?" Anthony asked. "Not really. According to the investigation that we did, we found that they were just normal people. But, when we finally encountered them, there was nothing normal about them. There was this lady who was a superhuman despite being only 20 years old, Doris replied. "Are you serious? You are trying to tell me that the superhuman that you guys encountered is only 20 years old? Are you taking me for a fool? There is no way that a person who is that young is able to reach the superhuman level. Why don't you come up with another reason why you lost John, and the Mirage Crystal as well?" Anthony snapped when he heard that. He had not expected that they were going to not only fail the mission that they had been given, but, rather than giving him the exact reason why they had failed, they were coming to lie to him. Did they think that he was just a child? Currently, he himself was already at the 10th level of the ordinary human. So, he knew just how difficult it was for a person to be able to break through to the superhuman level by breaking the genetic lock. Additionally, although it was true that even the young master that had been here, Derek, had also reached the 10th level of the ordinary human, just like him, he was stuck in that place. Anyway, Anthony knew that the reason why Derek had managed to reach that level was simply because of the resources that he was receiving from his background. Since he was from a big stronghold, the quality of the resources that he was receiving were way higher than the ones that Anthony was receiving. But still, there was something that Anthony knew. And that was the fact that, there was no possibility at all for a person who was below the age of 25 to break through to the superhuman level. That was something that was being researched on, as nobody could explain it. After all, they knew that for a person to be able to break the genetic lock, it was not only a requirement for resources and relentless training, but there was something else that was related to the cells that a person possessed. Since he was the vice supreme leader of the Panthers organization, he of course knew a lot of information. And this was just one of them. He of course knew that there were a lot of young people from the big strongholds, but, until now, he had not heard of any one of them that had managed to reach the superhuman level before the age of 30. Even the 25 that was stated before was just an estimation that had been made by the researchers. But so far, there was nobody that had reached that level before the age of 30. And, The one that had broken the genetic lock at the age of 30 was the one who had set the record, the best and only one in the entire world. Doris and the two that were with her felt their faces paling. They could feel that there was a lot of pressure that was coming from Anthony. Anthony was already 2 levels above them, so, even if they wanted to resist, they had no chance at all. But that is the truth. I will never dare to lie to you. That was the situation that we encountered. Other than the superhuman, there was also a group of 5 ladies that were at the same level as us. Additionally, even Samantha was together with them. And there was this young man who did not show anything to us, but, just from the fact that he was not affected by the mirage crystal, I can tell that he is not simple. Doris hardened her heart as she explained. Anthony calmed down a little. Of course, the reason why he had calmed down was that he had been informed that Samantha was present. La8 test novels on N of LB and com. Although previously they had been having some doubts, but still, they had not stopped suspecting the butterfly organization. And now, since Doris had claimed that Samantha was there, then, that implied that this matter might actually be fully and only related to the butterfly organization. Can you describe to me the appearance of that superhuman level lady? Anthony asked after a moment of silence. He wanted to confirm if what they were saying was actually true. She had black hair, green eyes, and was quite tall, about 180 centimeters to 182 centimeters. Doris began describing Celine to Anthony. But she had not said much when Anthony raised his hand to stop her. There's no need for you to continue. It is not her. It seems that there is another force that is involved in this matter. Anthony stated after confirming that the lady that they were talking about was not the leader of the butterfly organization. Although he was venting his anger previously, claiming that Doris and the group had come to lie to him, but he knew just how loyal they were to him. After all, they had been together with him for more than 5 years now. And until now, even if he was not present, they always made sure to support him. It did not matter who they were talking to, but they made sure to talk about him in the best light that they could. It was just that, he was so angry. After all, currently, he was not sure if he was supposed to leave here. There was a young master that had come over with an excuse that the people from the Panthers organization were breaking the rules by going out. Additionally, Derek had set his sights on Patricia. He had claimed that he was going to come back within 1 week. And Anthony was not sure if he was supposed to go out within this week. If he went out and Derek came back, then things might be a little complicated. Can it be that there is someone that knows about the secret that our Panthers organization is keeping? If that is the case, then things are going to be a little more complicated than this. If the secret was exposed, and the other person actually possesses superhumans, then this is going to implicate the entire stronghold, rather than just our organization. Anthony thought to himself silently. He was a person that had been in the position that he was in for several years now, so he had received a lot of information about the other strongholds. It was not much rare to see that some people from the big strongholds made a move against the small ones. That was of course if there was something that had caught their eye. It was just that, Anthony was not sure about this. But still, if the other party had a superhuman with them, then it was going to be complicated. He was not sure if even the supreme leader was going to be capable of dealing with this matter. After all, although she was a superhuman, they did not know what level the other party was. But what Anthony was sure about was the fact that the other party had already surpassed the first stage of the superhuman level. As for the supreme leader, she had not taken the position of the supreme leader of the Panthers organization for a long time now. Instead, she was considered one of the youngest leaders of organizations present in the strongholds. Moreover, she had only reached the superhuman level recently. So, considering that the stronghold that they belonged in did not possess much resources, Anthony doubted that the supreme leader would have managed to break through to another stage of the superhuman level. Anthony, why don't you give me an explanation of what is going on? A cold, beautiful and serene voice suddenly brought Anthony out of his thoughts. Anthony, why don't you give me an explanation of what is going on? A cold, beautiful and serene voice suddenly brought Anthony out of his thoughts. Anthony felt his body freezing. Then, with hesitation, he turned around and looked towards the direction of the voice. There, he spotted a beautiful lady that had appeared. The lady possessed long wavy blue hair that was neatly tied behind her back, blue eyes that were filled with indifference, and a slender curvaceous figure, with a height of about 178 centimeters. She possessed incredible beauty as well, but Anthony did not even have the thought of lusting after her considering the position that she held. This lady was none other than the leader of the Panthers organization. She was Sylvia Brown. She had already reached the superhuman level, and that was the reason why her beauty was currently too much attention-grabbing. She was currently wearing casual clothing, which was a red flowing dress that accentuated her figure. The dress that she was wearing exposed little of her skin, that was at the collarbone. "Supreme Leader," Anthony exclaimed. He had not expected that the Supreme Leader was going to come over, just in time to hear about his conversation. Anthony was currently nervous. Although it was true that it was this lady in front of him that had given him the position of the second in command in the entire Panthers organization, it depended on his ability, rather than her favorability towards him. She treated him neutrally just like everyone else. It was just that she had never embarrassed him in front of the others considering his position. After all, if even other people could look at him as he lost his face, then, how was he going to manage them? I asked a question. "Why don't you explain to me what is going on here? I have already received information that we have lost yet another guardian of our organization. So, why don't you give me an explanation of what happened?" Sylvia asked once again. Although her voice was sweet to listen to, but the coldness within it made Anthony shiver. He was not the only one that was reacting in such a way. Even Patricia, who had just arrived, was the same. It was just that, she was frozen in place, without anything to say. Anyway, it was not as if she was the one who was being talked to. So, she wanted to continue shrinking at the entrance, making sure that her presence was not noticed. Of course, she knew that currently, Anthony was in trouble. He had already informed her about what the Supreme Leader had told him. He had not only failed to complete the mission, but instead, he had even led to the death of one of the guardians of the Panthers organization. Although it was true that he did not directly lead to the death of the guardian, but still, he was the one that had sent the guardian out of the stronghold. Additionally, he had not done enough research about the information that he had received before acting on it. Of course, Patricia had no intention of trying to defend Anthony at this point. Anyway, it was not as if what she was going to say was going to make any impact to this ice-cold beauty. Just considering the fact that ever since Sylvia entered the room, she had solely focused on Anthony, completely ignoring the presence of the other four people, it was obvious that she didn't care about what they had to say, for now at least. Additionally, although she knew that Anthony was in no position to speak up for her so that she could not be targeted by Derek, his silence was enough to make her feel a little resentful. Anyway, Anthony went ahead and claimed that he was completely helpless in that situation. And, it was not as if he was going to change anything even if he decided to fight against Derek. But, it was the same now. Just like him, there was nothing that she could do. Anyway, she was holding a lower position as compared to Anthony. That implied that, her words had the least impact as compared to Anthony. As for the remaining guardians, they both had their heads lowered. They were the ones that were in charge of the mission, but they had failed. And more than that, they had also lost a fellow guardian. What they were afraid of the most was the punishment that could be placed on them by the Supreme Leader. Although they were afraid of Anthony's punishment as well, but the level of fear could not be compared to the one that they felt towards Sylvia. The fear that they possessed was not something that just came out of instinct. Instead, they knew how cruel Sylvia could be. There was a time that the previous Vice Supreme Leader did not do what she had instructed him to do. And more than that, the guy even had the guts to go ahead and say that, had it not been that Sylvia had already reached the superhuman level ahead of him, then, he would have taken over the position of the Supreme Leader of the Panthers organization. In the end, that guy was killed brutally. Sylvia did not care if the guy was the Vice Supreme Leader of the organization. Anyway, since this guy was going to cause infighting within the organization, she decided to eliminate him. As for the reason, everyone could guess. But there was nobody that went ahead to question her. Anyway, she was the one who held a supreme authority over the entire Panthers organization. Ever since that day, nobody had dared to go against her. Even her cold personality was enough to send shivers down the spine of everyone that was against her. Additionally, she was already at the superhuman level, and there was nobody in the entire organization that could resist her. I failed. Despite being completely unwilling, Anthony had no choice but to admit that he had failed. He had been given only a single chance to go out and find what he was looking for, but he did not succeed. More than that, a guardian died. "What did you fail in?" Sylvia asked. The expression on her face did not shift even for a single moment. Anthony hardened his heart as he replied, "I failed to complete the mission that I had set out to do." "What did I say that the punishment for failure is going to be?" Sylvia asked once again. Anthony remained silent for a moment. His heart was already palpitating, wondering why it was that he was so unlucky. After all, at first, when he decided to look for the information, he had not been sent out by the supreme leader. But after he failed and Eric died, it immediately attracted the attention of the supreme leader, and with that, he was given a chance to redeem himself. Anyway, Anthony was the one who possessed much information concerning the thing that she was looking for. For that reason, she had allowed him to continue with what he was doing. But, if he failed, he was going to be punished. But if he succeeded, he was going to be forgiven for losing a guardian. Since he was the one who had given the mission to Eric, he had to bear the consequences. "I'll have my legs broken," Anthony replied. No matter how unwilling he was, there was nothing that he could do. This lady was a tyrant. And, although he was completely unwilling, there was nothing that he could do about it. Of course, he had always admired Sylvia. It was not just due to the beauty that she possessed, but due to the strength that she possessed at her age. Currently, it was a little difficult to judge her age as she was a superhuman, but still, Anthony could tell that she was younger than him. And since that was the case, Anthony had always been someone who admired strong people. Moreover, according to the history that he had gotten about Sylvia, he knew that she had risen to the position that she was in with her own efforts. This mirrored what he had gone through in order to get to the position that he was in, so, he admired her bravery, cruelty, and boldness. But of course, everything had collapsed now. Anyway, the bravery, cruelty, and boldness that Sylvia possessed were going to be used on him now. It looked cool if she was punishing someone else, but it was completely different if he was the one that was facing the harsh side that Sylvia possessed. "Do you have any complaint about the punishment that I am about to administer to you?" Sylvia questioned. No, Anthony replied. But of course, in his heart, he was yelling that he was having a complaint. Anyway, it was not his fault that the mission had failed. It was just that there was a force that was involved in this matter. He was not even sure if the secret that the organization was keeping had already been leaked out or not. So, what was he supposed to do when he was facing a superhuman? It was good enough that Doris, Steve and Ken had both come back alive. Although they had suffered some injuries, that was not something difficult for them to heal considering the level of technology that the stronghold possessed. "But I would like to be shameless enough to request for yet another chance. This time, I will do everything personally," Anthony stated through his gritted teeth. "But I would like to be shameless enough to request for yet another chance. This time, I will do everything personally," Anthony stated through his gritted teeth. "Do you think I always give more second chances to those that have already failed to utilize the first second chance that they are given? That does not apply to me. You're the first person in the entire organization that I have ever given the second chance. But now, don't expect that I'm going to give you any other chance," Sylvia replied with an indifferent expression on her face. In the next moment, she made her move. Before Anthony could even react, she had already kicked towards his legs. Crack! His left leg was immediately broken under the immense force that was contained in that kick. As Anthony collapsed onto the ground due to his failure to maintain his center of gravity after his left leg was broken, Sylvia kicked out once again. Crack! The right leg that Anthony was using to support himself in the half-kneeling position was also broken at the knee. And with that, Anthony was immediately crippled. All those that had witnessed this happening felt their hearts turning cold. They had previously heard rumors or seen how the supreme leader was a cold person. But now, they had come to realize how cruel she could be. It had never changed. At this moment, none of them wanted to be in her bad books. Even Anthony, who was the second in command and was the one that possessed the second highest combat capabilities in the entire organization, was still crippled. What about them that were almost considered useless? If the Panthers organization managed to get the second superhuman, then, their position as the supremes of the entire stronghold would be guaranteed. But from the looks of it, since Anthony had gotten his legs broken, unless he utilized some of the most expensive resources in order to heal up, there was no way that he was going to get back to how he was previously. Additionally, they were beginning to doubt if Sylvia was going to give Anthony a chance to become a superhuman. After all, right now, she had just broken his legs. It was normal that Anthony was going to hold some resentment towards her. Since that was the case, then, how was Sylvia, who was known to be a cruel person, going to allow Anthony to become a superhuman? If Anthony became a superhuman, didn't that mean that she was going to have a person that wanted to compete against her? In reality, the leadership of the Panthers organization was not hereditary and neither did it depend on family background and support. Instead, it all depended on a person's ability. That person had to be the strongest in the entire organization, and apart from that, they had to be having some brains at least. Anyway, if there was any person in the stronghold who did not have brains, and was looking to take over the position of the supreme leader of the organization, then, that person might not even make it. After all, the others were going to use their own wit to kill him even without him knowing how he died. This is going to be the punishment that you are going to receive for failing the mission. And, you are not going to be healed using any of the organization's resources. You are going to stay like that for 1 year so that you can pay for the mistake that you have made. Sylvia said nonchalantly, as if what she had just done was nothing to her. More than that, you are going to be locked inside the dungeon to ensure that you don't leave the organization. As for your position as the vice supreme leader of the organization, it is going to be maintained for now. But, if another person outperforms you, then, the position will be given to that person, Sylvia continued. Anthony was currently lying on the floor. His eyes were listless. When he came to the stronghold, he had always been dreaming about reaching the top. And after entering the Panthers organization that allowed him to enter the stronghold, he had thought that he had made it in life. It was only after he entered the organization that he finally realized the truth about the strongholds. Without strength, he was nothing. For that reason, he had always been working hard to make sure that he reached the top. True to his wishes, he managed to reach the top, second top at least, through his own efforts. But now, it seemed that the position that he had been working for so long to attain was going to be taken away. It was not just from the fact that he was going to lose face in front of everyone for having been locked inside the dungeon, with his legs crippled, but the other factions were going to utilize this chance in order to take over the position. Just as Sylvia had said, if there was going to be another person that was way better as compared to Anthony, then, that person was going to take the position of the vice supreme leader. Although Anthony was currently the second strongest in the entire organization, he did not leave behind the third and the fourth by a large margin. So, it was not going to be difficult for the two of them to be able to surpass him during the time that he would be locked inside the dungeon. Of course, to be able to break the genetic lock and reach the superhuman level was going to be a little difficult for them to complete within the year that he would be locked inside the dungeon. But still, there was another stage that was in between the superhuman level and the 10th level of the ordinary human. This was the same level that Maxwell of the Shadow Organization had reached. Currently, Anthony was just at the 10th level of the ordinary human. But, if there was going to be another person that was going to reach the level in between the superhuman level and the ordinary human level, then, that person was obviously going to take over the position from him. Although he was currently undergoing a lot of pain, other than a simple grunt, Anthony did not let out any other sound. He knew that currently, there was nothing that he could do. Even if he wanted to be given another chance, Sylvia's decisiveness was enough to tell him that since she had already decided, there was nothing that he was going to do to change her decision. I hope that you don't find what you are looking for, and after I get out of that dungeon, I hope that I will be the one to get whatever it is that we are looking for. After that, if there's going to be a chance, then, I'm going to stomp you from the high ceiling that you are in, and look at you crawling on the ground. Anthony thought to himself. Although he knew that it was almost an impossibility, but still, he held some hope. Even if there was only a 0.0001% chance of this happening, then, he was willing to put his hope in that small probability. Sylvia looked at Anthony, who was finally showing some resentment in his eyes before she shifted her gaze away and looked at the three that had come over to report to Anthony about what had happened. Of course she knew what Anthony was thinking about. But that was not something that she was going to allow to happen. Other than there being the fact that Anthony was not going to possess any resources, and she was going to cut off his connections to the outside world, she was not going to give him a chance for growing up. If there was a chance that Anthony showed some signs of reaching the superhuman level, and the resentment towards her was still present, she was not going to hesitate to eliminate him as well. As for why she had decided to leave him alive, that was simply because she might be having some questions to ask him. Although she had not been actively seeking the information, but Anthony had made her want to look for the information actively. Previously, it was all due to the pride that she possessed that she did not want to do the search. But it was completely different now. Now that the Panthers organization had already began making its moves, then, there was no need for them to stop. Being stared at by Sylvia, Doris and the rest felt their bodies trembling. Still, Sylvia remained silent as she looked at them. After about 2 minutes of silence, Sylvia finally spoke. "Are you still going to continue standing there? Get inside here." Patricia, who was still standing at the door, looking at Anthony, who was sprawled onto the ground helplessly, with some resentment towards Sylvia, was suddenly stunned when she heard that. With fear in her heart, she stepped into the room. Of course she did not like what Sylvia had done to Anthony. Anyway, although it was true that Anthony did not protect her during the time that she needed him, it was not as if Anthony had not clarified that he was not interested in her romantically. Since that was the case, then, why was he supposed to risk his life for her? They were just friends, and Anthony had done a lot of favors for her until now. But still, although she was a little resentful towards Anthony, that did not imply that the love that she had towards him had died down. Instead, she still loved him. So, she was hurt when she saw that he was injured. Moreover, when she heard the punishment that he was being given, she really wanted to curse at Sylvia. It was just that she was capable of holding herself back. She knew that the moment that she did that, then, she might end up dying, which was something that was completely useless. Dying a death like that was not something that she had ever dreamed of. She wanted to die with purpose. After Patricia entered the room, Sylvia looked at the group of four. Then, she went ahead and sat on the couch that was not far from where they were standing. Now, tell me all the information about this force that you were talking about. I want to know all the details about how you investigated, and what it is that you faced out there. Sylvia stated as she leaned back on the couch, waiting for their response. Now, tell me all the information about this force that you were talking about. I want to know all the details about how you investigated, and what it is that you faced out there. Sylvia stated as she leaned back on the couch, waiting for their response. Doris, although she was scared of Sylvia, she still took a step forward and began explaining. Anyway, during that mission, she was the leader. So, if a report of the mission was required, then, she was the one that was going to be responsible in giving it out. She went ahead and described to Sylvia everything that had happened. She did not dare to hide from her that they had utilized the Mirage Crystal. But the Mirage Crystal failed when it was used. The only person that was affected by the Mirage Crystal was none other than Samantha. As for the rest, to them, the effects of the Mirage Crystal were nothing more than a light show. Sylvia squinted her eyes as she listened. Had it not been that she knew that Doris was afraid of her, and she was not lying, she would have already beaten her up, considering that she was not a person that liked to be lied to. Additionally, she attached a lot of importance to the mission. So, she had to listen carefully so that she could get a clue of what they were dealing with. Can you describe to me how that lady looks like? Sylvia asked after Doris had completed her explanation. Doris thought that Sylvia did not believe what she had said. Still, she went ahead and explained to her how Celine looked like. Additionally, she gave away the information that they had researched about Celine, implying that, according to the information, she was just a normal girl. She had attended university and her family was running a cosmetics business. From this information, it was not difficult for Sylvia to infer that, according to the information, Celine was not related to any stronghold. But that was an impossibility, considering that there was no way that there was going to be a superhuman without using the resources that were only found in the stronghold domain. With a frown etched on her face, Sylvia contemplated for a moment. After that, she asked again, "What about that young man that you were talking about? Describe to me how he looks like." It was not that she cared much about the appearance of the people. It was just that she had to get as much information about the opponent that she was facing. Perhaps she had some knowledge about the other person. Doris gave a brief description about Jack's appearance. And when Sylvia heard what she was saying, she could not help but have her brows twitch a little. He has silver hair. Not many people actually possess that color of hair. And the blue eyes also match the same description as her. Could it be that he is the one that I was looking for? If that is the case, then I will have to make a move personally, Sylvia thought to herself. Okay. All of you can go and do your thing. Make sure that you pick that garbage and take him to the dungeon. Look him up for 1 year, and nobody is allowed to let him out. The meals would be provided 3 times a day, Sylvia stated as she rose to her feet. Then, she left the room, her mind still contemplating about the information that she had received. Although she was not sure about what she was thinking about, but still, she was having some doubts about it. For that reason, she had decided that she was going to act personally, rather than depending on a group of unreliable subordinates. But there's something that does not add up. How is it possible that there is a lady that is at the superhuman level beside him? And he never made a move, but he was not affected by the Mirage Crystal. Can this also be related to her? Sylvia continued to think as she went back to her living quarters. Anyway, it does not matter. I will just go over and look for him. After I get him, everything will be revealed. There's nothing that is going to be hidden from me as long as I want to get the information. Several thoughts ran through Sylvia's mind as she finally entered her living quarters. It was just that she could not go out for now. Although she was not afraid of Derek, But there was that old man that was already at the third stage of the superhuman level. Although he was capable of hiding, but that was not something that could be hidden from a person like her. She had already experienced several people that possessed special abilities, and for that reason, she was capable of detecting them using her own methods. She knew that it was going to be a little difficult if that old man decided to get involved. Moreover, she was a superhuman. That implied that, if she decided to go to the normal world, then, the people from the big strongholds were going to be concerned. Although the majority of the time, they would turn a blind eye to ordinary human-level humans going to the normal countries, but it was completely different when it came to superhumans. It had already been several years since the last battle ever broke out. But still, those from the big strongholds all knew that this was just the calm before the storm. So, they had to be prepared. Since she was a superhuman, if a battle broke out, she was going to be required in the battlefield. That was the only thing that was restricting her. Otherwise, she would have decided to leave at this exact moment and look for Jack. "Please come in. Forgive me for my disrespect." The person that had spoken previously stated once again, only this time, he spoke in a respectful voice. After that, they opened the gate and allowed Jack's group to enter. Anyway, since Samantha was possessing the armor that was only available for those from the stronghold, that implied that she was not to be messed with. As for Samantha taking another person's armor, that was completely out of their imagination. After all, just looking at the 8 stars that the armor had was enough to tell them that Samantha was not just any low-level person. 8 stars. They knew that that was the level that the guardians of several organizations were in. They themselves were only at the 3rd star, more than 5 levels beneath Samantha. As for who the other 3 people that were accompanying Samantha were, they did not dare to question that. Anyway, Samantha was a big shot in the strongholds. Since she had decided to bring over a group of people, perhaps she had decided that she was going to recruit them. It was not strange for something like this to happen. The majority of the organizations always looked for potential geniuses that they could nurture. Jack and the group finally entered the secluded area. When they passed through the gates, Jack realized that there was a series of buildings that was present behind these walls. All of them seemed to be built using the same material that was used to build the wall around here. Moreover, the area inside the wall was quite big, covering about 5 kilometers radius. Well, that was just Jack's estimation, but he was not really sure about how big this place really was. Samantha, who seemed to be familiar with this place, led the way. They went into a 3-story building that was occupying an area of about 3 square kilometers. That is the testing area. All those people that want to enter the stronghold have to pass through here, and after their qualifications are approved, they are going to be allowed to enter the stronghold domain. As for where in the stronghold domain they are going to, that would be their decisions, Samantha explained. After entering the testing area, Jack realized that this place was just like an indoor playground. There were several machines that were used for testing. There was several treadmills, some machines that could be used to test a person's punching power and so on. Still, there were several rooms that were enclosed by glass walls. When Samantha noticed Jack's curious gaze, she explained again. That is where they test the reaction speed and other things like that. Sometimes, the tests might be something that might affect others. So, they need to be isolated during the testing period. Celine looked around curiously. She could tell that the level of technology that was used here was higher as compared to the one that was used back in Kartu City. It might be true that Kartu City was actually the capital city of Azima, but the level of technology there was considered mediocre as compared to the one that was being seen here. Samantha, is the level of technology in the strongholds the same as this one here? Celine asked curiously. For some reason, she found herself interested in the technology. It was as if she wanted to learn everything. Actually, the level of technology that is found in the strongholds is higher as compared to the one that is found here. Additionally, for those that are from the bigger strongholds, I have heard that the level of technology there is even more advanced as compared to the one that belongs to the small strongholds, Samantha responded. From her eyes, yearning could be seen. It was obvious that she was interested in visiting those big strongholds. It was just that, with the current level of strength that she possessed, she did not even qualify to go there. Anyway, others might actually not be as strong as she was, but, using the background that they possessed, they were able to live in those big strongholds. We don't have to go through any testing. I will take you to the entrance of the stronghold domain, Samantha stated as she led the way once again. We don't have to go through any testing. I will take you to the entrance of the stronghold domain, Samantha stated as she led the way once again. Inside this testing building, there were only a few people present. Since the testing period had already elapsed, they were no longer required here. So, the majority of them had decided to go back to their residences. As for those few people that were present, they did not pay much attention towards Samantha and her group. Anyway, since they were capable of entering through the gates, then, that implied that they were qualified to be here. Of course, none of them thought that Jack's group had just been simply allowed in. Anyway, it was a routine that when the time for testing and the entry into the stronghold domain had already passed, nobody was going to be allowed in here. So, only those with authority or from the stronghold were the ones that were going to be allowed to be able to enter this place. And, although Samantha was still hiding the armor that she had beneath the thick clothing that she was wearing, nobody doubted that this group was actually from the stronghold. Ignoring the curious gazes that were thrown at them by some of the people present, Samantha led the way towards one of the doors that was present inside this building. The building itself was not a story building. So, everything was done in the same floor. If there was anything else that needed to be taken care of, then, there were other buildings that were going to be in charge of that. Jack's group arrived in front of a door that was about 1.5 meters wide, and 3 meters tall. Just from looking at it, Jack could tell that this door was made from quality materials. Although he himself was currently at the superhuman level, he felt that he was not actually capable of breaking this door. Anyway, it was not as if he had the intention to do so. So, he simply waited for Samantha to do what she had to do. Samantha took a step forward and placed her hand on the door. The moment that her hand touched the door, a red light shot out of the door, scanning her hand. After about 5 seconds, the red light turned into green. And in the next moment, an interface appeared. It was just a holographic screen that possessed a keyboard with pure numbers, without letters. Additionally, there was a line of words that stated, "Please enter your ID number." Samantha looked at the interface that had appeared in front of her, requiring her to put in her ID. She began tapping on the numbers on the virtual keyboard, putting in the ID that she utilized as a member of the Butterfly organization. How complicated this thing is, Celine muttered. Other than just scanning the hand of the person that had touched the door, they required the person to put in the ID as well. That is just how it is. We are all prohibited by the contract that we signed from ever revealing our ID number to anyone. This implies that, if we try to do that, we are going to die. Additionally, as a measure of security, the first thing that the security system that had been set up here requires is the fingerprint of the person, belonging to 5 fingers of the right hand. If a person's hand is cut and brought here and utilized in order to access this door, then, an enemy might actually be capable of entering the stronghold domain. The stronghold domain is the most important place for the human race, so they cannot allow any invasion to happen. For that reason, other than the fingerprints, a person is also required to give the ID number, Samantha explained. Oh, I see, Celine replied. Anyway, she was quite curious about what force it was that the people from the strongholds were facing against. Anyway, until now, they have never heard of any news about the invasion. And, how was that invasion carried out? If it was actually coming from the sky, the outer space of the blue planet, then, there was actually no guarantee that they were going to be able to see it. Of course, although they might actually be capable of hiding the presence of a spaceship in the air, but there is no way that they were going to be capable of preventing anybody from spotting it. Welcome to the stronghold domain. A mechanical voice came from the door. It seemed that other than the security system that had been installed on the door, there was even the sound system. After the voice faded, the double doors finally began opening, and when they finally opened fully, Jack and his group could not see anything other than a bright blinding light that was erupting from the entrance. This is just yet another security measure that was added. It is to prevent others who are not allowed to enter the stronghold domain from seeing what the inside looks like, Samantha stated as she led the way through the door. Jack and the group followed. But this time, Jack made sure that he was cautious. Anyway, they were going to a new environment, and there was no way that he was going to completely trust that everything was going to be okay. He had to be ready for anything, any changes might happen. After going through the door, Jack felt that his surroundings were enveloped in a bright light. There was nothing else that he could see, and the blinding light forced him to close his eyes. When he felt that the light had finally dimmed down, he opened his eyes, and when he did so, he realized that they were actually away from the building where they had been before. Currently, they were on top of a small hill. Below the hill, there was a forest, but it did not consist of any big trees. Rather, it was majorly dominated by shrubs and grass. Jack took a deep breath. He felt that the air here was quite fresh as compared to where they had been before. It was as if they had entered another place completely. The air outside is quite contaminated by the gases that are emitted from the industries. But here, everything is way advanced. Due to the high level of the technology that is present here, air pollution is not possible. Well, there is actually air pollution, but it is not at the same level as compared to the normal world. Currently, we have appeared outside of the stronghold. For us to be able to come here, it depends on my ID number. Since my ID number is registered to the stronghold where the butterfly organization is found, that is the area that I am going to appear, Samantha stated. Jack listened to all of these silently. But still, there were a lot of questions that he still had in mind. How is it possible that they had suddenly appeared from that mountain, and simply came over, appearing in another place completely? Additionally, just the change in the atmosphere was enough to tell them that they had actually come to a completely different place. His level of understanding was higher after he had gained the system. But still, he could not comprehend how this happened considering that he did not know to what level the humans in the stronghold domain had advanced in terms of technology. Can this be something like that? Something that happens in those fantasy movies? The teleportation? Celine asked excitedly. I guess you can say it's something like that. Anyway, for us to be able to reach here, it depended on the device that was created by a person using his special ability. His special ability is to bend space called spatiokinesis. I myself have never met a person with a special ability, other than you Celine. So, I'm not sure if the ability to manipulate space is actually real or not. Anyway, that is not something that you can find in our stronghold as it is considerably small, Samantha stated. Jack remained silent as he contemplated in what Samantha had said. Special abilities. This was mysterious, and he could not understand anything. Celine had managed to get the telekinesis special ability, but, according to the system, it was actually activated, rather than gaining it after she reached the superhuman level. Additionally, that ability that Celine possessed was actually acquired. That implied that she was never born with it. As for himself, he was not even sure if he actually possessed any special ability, and it was just that it had not been activated. Still, Jack had already realized that since they had come to the stronghold domain, it seemed that they had come to a completely different world. It is a good thing that the system gave me the ability to learn things at a speed that is 100 times faster than before. With this, I'm sure that I'm going to be capable of unveiling a lot of mysteries if I decide to focus on them, Jack thought silently. But that is something that is going to happen later on. For now, I have to pay a visit to the Panthers organization, to make sure that I get information about my mother. When that is out of the way, I will finally begin dealing with the matters concerning the strongholds. Jack then looked towards Samantha and said, "Let us go to the city that is outside the stronghold. We will be entering the stronghold tomorrow. For now, we need to get some rest. And oh, how are the cars that we came with going to come in?"